Yeah, but you must know the film is based on a book, a novel called Im Westen nichts Neues. When it was published in the 20s or something, it was very controversial.
Really?
Yeah, very controversial. The guy had a tough time. Mark is somebody who never believed in war. He saw the horrors of war. He saw the most terrible, the World War I was for the soldiers the worst, with gas and, you have seen the movie.
What, was he a soldier as well?
He was a soldier. And then I went to Afghanistan. I lived I lived for a year in the most remote area of Afghanistan. Not even in Kabul, but in the most remote area in Afghanistan.
Wait. Forget that question, sir.
Happy to talk about, So I lived in Kunduz, which is in northern Afghanistan. It's a city which is one of the centers in northern Afghanistan.
This is the second in our geopolitics special of the Ranveer Show. But this podcast isn't just about geopolitics. It's about the history of the world wars, Adolf Hitler, the history of Germany, Europe in the modern day, and possibly one of the most interesting human stories that I have come across in recent times. The goal of the Ranveer Show is to extract the best human stories out there from within India, from outside of India. And the German diplomat that we had on the show today, Dr. Philipp Ackermann, has led one of the most interesting lives amongst the podcast guests that I've hosted in recent times. So whether you're an Indian listener or whether you're sitting outside of my country, I promise you there's a lot to learn from this particular podcast. Whether you enjoy history, whether you enjoy geopolitics, or whether you enjoy incredible human stories, please keep your mind open and gain from this particular episode. For more episodes just like this, make sure you follow us on Spotify. The Ranveer Show is a Spotify exclusive. Every episode's available on Spotify 48 hours before it's available anywhere else in the world. My own meditation app, Level, is now live on the App Store and the Play Store. So if you want to begin your meditation or your yoga journey, or whether you want to further your meditation journey or your yoga journey, Level is the app that you need to download. And without further ado now, this is Dr. Philipp Ackermann teaching us about his own life learnings on The Ranveer Show. Dr. Philipp Ackermann, कैसे हो?
TikTok. We'll see. Birya, maybe. But right now it's TikTok.
All right. You usually get interviewed by news journalists. And often I've seen with diplomats, either journalists attack you or it's a very serious conversation. And today we'll only attack you, so we won't have a serious conversation.
Shoot, I'm happy. Go ahead. Shoot.
No, not at all. That's not what we do on podcasts. This is like we're meeting at a party. I'm getting to learn some geopolitics, some history, and some perspective. Let's begin with a simple, how are you, sir?
I'm very well. I just came from Delhi to Mumbai. It's always a pleasure to be in Mumbai. It's a great place. And this is my first appointment sitting with you, which is a great moment. I've never done a podcast before, so this is a premiere for me. And I'm looking forward to it. So all is well.
To begin with, I must ask you, have you met Dr. Jaishankar?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Many occasions, yeah.
Many occasions.
Yeah.
So you have a fair understanding of who he is and how he is as a person.
Yeah.
The Indian internet, especially the audiences that consume geopolitical content, are huge fanboys and fangirls.
I would count myself in this fan group.
Why do you say that?
Because he's a very smart man. Very smart. You see, he's a diplomat, a very seasoned diplomat. He has been in many diplomatic postings. And I myself, when I served in Washington, D.C., I met him there as the Indian ambassador to Washington. But now he has a political side to it. So he has both the diplomatic experience and the skills, and he's also a politician. And that's a very good combination for foreign policy. And let me tell you, I think the way he words and expresses Indian foreign policy is masterful. Because he's a very good communicator, as many Indians are. And he's very funny and witty. He can be very sort of eloquent and extremely, he plays with words. And at the same time, he's sharp as a razor. I mean, he's really, really good. It's a pleasure to converse with him. Pleasure to converse with him. I think India can be proud of this foreign minister.
Yeah. You said that he's got both diplomat skills as well as political skills. I'd actually like for you to break that down a little bit because not too many people in India, honestly, at least in Mumbai, which is like an extremely capitalistic city, not too many people I know have even tried becoming diplomats. I won't say the same for, say, Delhi or another part of India, but what do diplomat skills entail versus what do political skills entail?
So I think what's the skills of a diplomat? I think the diplomat should be able to communicate with everybody on the planet, basically, whether you are in Papua New Guinea or in Alaska or in Sweden or in Malawi. You should really be able to find a way of conversation. And then a second thing that a diplomat should know is, how to defend the interests of your country so that your counterpart or your counterpart in the country understands what you want. So how to make, let's say, our requirements, our requests, our ideas palpable for the other. So it's an intercultural communication skill that diplomats must have. You have to see how others will react, how to make your points in a way that the others understand them and take them up.
Okay.
Sometimes it's very difficult. For example, let's say we have extremely complicated relations with Russia right now for obvious reasons. How do you get through to the Russian side, which is basically very hostile when it comes to Germany right now for obvious reasons? But this is diplomatic skill. So how do you maneuver yourself in a communication-wise to your counterpart, make him understand what you want from him? That's diplomatic skill. A politician, on the other side, needs to take decisions. Decisions must be taken. He will clearly decide on how foreign policy will be shaped or which priorities in foreign policy are there. I mean, this is not only the foreign minister, it's the prime minister to start with, but the foreign minister has a big word to say in this. So what Dr. Jaishankar, I think, has is both. He knows how to communicate and he knows how to take political decisions. And that's why he's, I think, a very successful foreign minister.
So as a diplomat, you're constantly getting inputs from your country's government.
Clearly.
And you have to do certain things when it comes to the diplomats of other nations.
Yes.
In terms of if your government wants to talk to their government, the work actually happens through the diplomats.
Yeah.
So the main skill is communication skills.
Exactly.
And some form of writing, I'm assuming.
Yeah. And you write back then to capital. I mean, you write long reports saying that the Indian side looks at this problem in such and such way.
Gotcha.
So basically you receive and you write back home.
Okay.
And then you receive from home, they say instructions, go to the Indians, ask them to build up a partnership on green and sustainable development together with us, and then you go to them.
Okay. So Dr. Jaishankar spent decades as a diplomat. And then he switched into becoming a politician because he possibly figured that, when I stay abroad, this is how people perceive my country. He learned certain things and now he's applying it to help the Modi government with governance, especially when it comes to foreign policy.
Exactly.
All right. Okay. Now I'll let you break him down a little bit more. Have you ever chilled with him?
I think chilling in your way, I would say no. But what we did was, when you sit, we had my foreign minister came, we had a lunch with him. And when you sit over lunch, then it can become very funny also.
Really?
He tells a couple of stories, which I'm not at liberty to share with you.
No problem.
But he has a huge experience and he can then be very, very insightful and funny at a time. So it is very entertaining and enlightening to sit with him at a dinner time. So I think Dr. Jaishankar is a very, very well respected foreign minister worldwide. I think he has a name, a household name, Dr. Jaishankar. So.
His name comes up in the next PM conversation sometimes, like he's one of the dark horses.
Is that so? Yeah.
I'd say he's a dark horse for it. I don't know if he himself wants to do that.
Well, let me tell you, as a diplomat, if you want to be something, rather not talk about it. The moment you throw your hat and say, I'm here, and the risk is that you become burnt or that they kick you out very early. So you have to be very, very careful on how to. So I haven't heard about that. That's for me the first time that I hear, but I'm not surprised that he doesn't speak about it.
There was a movie I saw recently about World War I. It's called All Quiet on the Western Front. Oh my God.
Yeah. It's quite a movie, no? It's quite a movie.
It's not for everyone.
It's
I think
tough, no? It's tough.
And basically for people who haven't seen it, one, I highly recommend it. It's a painfully dark movie. Two, it shows the German perspective on World War I, which Germany had lost.
Also.
Yeah. And it still showed kind of the German spirit in the camps before the soldiers actually went out to war. And the reason I think everyone should watch this is everyone has only seen the American or the Allied forces' perspectives on World War II and World War I. And this is one of the rare instances where you get to see the German side.
Yeah, but you must know the film is based on a book, a novel called Im Westen nichts Neues. It's all quiet on the Western Front, basically, or nothing new on the Western Front, as you would say. And it's written by a very famous German novelist called Erich Maria Remarque. And it was, when it was published in the 20s or something, it was a big, or 30s, 20s, I think. It was very controversial.
Really?
Yeah, very controversial. The guy had a tough time because people felt that this perspective of his did not match the perspectives of many at that time.
What was his perspective?
Because he's basically a pacifist. Yeah, I think Erich Remarque is somebody who never believed in war. He saw the horrors of war. He saw the most terrible, the World War I was for the soldiers the worst, with gas and, you have seen the movie.
What, was he a soldier as well?
He was a soldier.
Okay.
So basically he wanted to have peace. And this book was about, the horrors of war that should lead to a more peaceful world. And therefore, in German schools now, I have read this book. It was basically part of the curriculum. Everybody,
really?
We all read these books, these books in school.
It's a very dark book to make children read.
When you grow, not at the age of 9, let's say, but when we were 16 or something.
I would probably argue that it's dark even for a 16-year-old.
It is dark, But that's the reality we have to be confronted with. That was World War I, then World War II. This is a part of our history, and we have to understand this history, and we have to take out the lessons out of this history. And that's the lessons is avoid war as much as you can. And the war is bringing unhappiness in the broadest form to everybody. And what we see in Ukraine right now, when you see the pictures of these cities that are completely destroyed. I mean, like Hiroshima, there is not a single house is there anymore. You feel, is that really necessary? I mean, why do hundreds of thousands of people have to die? Is there a good reason for that? And I would say there is no reason for that.
Yeah. I have to talk about the Russia-Ukraine situation also, but I actually want to talk a little bit about the German situation a little more.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Yeah.
And this is something I've wanted to ask. Actually, I've asked a German friend. I have German friends, but I'd actually like for you to say it on the podcast. How are Germans taught about the world wars? Because I'll tell you how Indians are taught about world wars. And I'm assuming that this is thanks to the British who ruled over us, and then it's written in our textbooks that way. We're definitely taught about it from a perspective that the Allied forces were the good people and the heroes, and then the movies we see in Hollywood always portray it like that. I believe war is entirely grey, and there is right and wrong on both sides, but the side that wins eventually gets the right over history textbooks. But I'd like to actually know how history is taught in Germany, especially when it comes to the world wars.
So it is a big chapter in schools. Both world wars, especially the Second World War, is a big chapter in the curriculum. And we did it when I was a kid. We were taught twice about at an early stage, and then later when I did my Abitur, the end exam of
how
school.
Early?
I think we started history at grade 7, and it was then in grade 8 we talked about it, and then again in grade 12 or something.
Gotcha.
So it's a defining moment for post-war German history, and therefore I think it takes a big part of ours. Now, when you say grey, I think that's difficult an argument for the Second World War, because the Second World War, the responsibility is completely clear. It lies exclusively with the Germans. Adolf Hitler was ideologically crazy. I think that's what you have to say. And he, in his illusion or in his crazy ideas of how Germany should look like, he started this war with everybody. I mean, it's unbelievable. He was involving the whole world. And I think the end was to be expected in hindsight. He lost terribly. And I say that with a sigh of relief, we are very happy about it. It cost us heavily. So when you go, you have been to Germany, you told me you have been to Düsseldorf, and you see the destruction of German cities is like scars all over the country. But I think the craziness of this Nazi ideology had to be eliminated. And I think one reason why we are so friendly with the United States and the Brits and the French, and so that is that they helped us to overcome that. And that means by winning over the Germans. So I think the Second World War, there is really no doubt left. Now, the First World War, there is a huge debate under historians how it came to this war. And I would say this is more difficult to say, although the Germans have a huge amount of responsibility there again. But there is one theory proposed by Australian historian called Christopher Clark, whom I quite like, actually. And he says, the rulers of this time, mostly non-democratic rulers, with the exception maybe of England and America, they decided on a war because they felt at that time that wars would be over quickly and rearranged a bit geographical territories, because they were experiencing wars in the 19th century that went over quickly with not a lot of victims and so. But what they weren't thinking of or weren't considered, or they didn't know, was that the weaponry, the armament had made such a progress that wars were fought completely differently, with tanks, with poison gas, with machine guns all of a sudden, So they were in their thinking basically 50 years away from reality. And they were themselves shocked to see how violent, how gruesome, how terrible, how horrible this war unfolded. So Christopher Clark calls it the sleepwalkers. They walked into this war like sleepwalkers. I think it's not a theory that is entirely accepted by the historical world, but I think there is a lot to say about it. So the First World War, for example, in Germany, was not as felt as elsewhere because it never took place on German soil. It was in Belgium, in France. It was outside Germany, not inside Germany. By the way, I have to say that in the First World War, we have a huge contingent of Indian soldiers, the Indian British Army. And there is a very good book, which I recommend to read. It's called The Book of Everlasting Things by Aanchal Malhotra, a very young, extremely smart Delhi writer. And she describes in this book, it's a book about partition, actually, but there is a big chapter on an Indian soldier from Lahore who goes to Belgium and fights for the British Army, And it's a very interesting aspect. I read that with great pleasure because, a European soldier you would understand with all the problems, between the countries. But an Indian soldier, they came to Europe. They've never been in Europe, never. He has an Indian mindset. He has grown up in Lahore. He's a perfumer, and all of a sudden he's being sent by the English to fight in the trenches of Belgium. And you see the terrible irony of war is that these completely innocent people who had nothing to do with it ended up in the trenches in Belgium. And I find it's a very good aspect to see then how many Indians were shipped to Europe in order to fight with the British on a good side, yes, but basically they had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Why Indians of all sorts?
What year was your father born in?
My father is born in 35. It's today his 88th birthday.
Wow.
So my father was 10 at the end of the war.
What has he said about it?
Yeah, we talked about the war all the time. Also with my grandparents, whom I fortunately met, and my grandmother, she lived until she was 103, so she had ample time to share all her experience. So my grandfather, from my father's side, died in the war. He was shot in 1940. So my grandmother lived alone with 4 kids. She had 4 kids. And he was shot in the first year of the war, very unusual. The terrible casualties came only later, but he was in France, he was shot. So basically my family was very, at an early stage, exposed to what the war meant, because my grandmother was a widow at the age of not even 30. And then the family, took her on, and the kids grew up with uncles and aunts, but my father, when you are 10 and the war is over, I think he has a very strong memory as a kid. 10 years, people think. So he can describe the last years. He experienced the bombs falling, and he was a young boy, with basically little to eat during that. They really suffered. They really suffered. And they were shipped from place to place because it was not safe anymore. And you get an insecurity as a child when you don't know where to belong and where your parents are, that will go with you for the rest of your life. So I was very happy that my parents were very vocal and talked about the war a lot. But there are many people who never mentioned it. Many Germans were in Soviet camps after the war for years and years and years and had the most terrible life and never mentioned it. And I find that very interesting, because when you talk about with Indians of a certain age who have lived partition, there are many families that never mentioned what happened in partition also.
Yeah.
It's like a tombstone. Yeah. You don't open it. And I met an old Sardarji in Delhi, whom I really like. And he told me that he was from west of the border, somehow in a village of Punjab. And they moved to Delhi. And he says, we never talked about it. The only thing he knew was the name of the village. And then he read this book of Anchal Malhotra, this very young, she's 33. A very good book, Remnants of a Separation, where she takes up oral history, making people talk about their partition experience. And he said, when I read it, I had the urge to really know about this past for the first time. I wanted to know it. I wanted what happened to my family. Now he's 70-something, so everybody's dead by now. Yeah. So he felt that, and that's what I'm talking. That's what I meant when I said, history is such an important part of yourself. Even if it is a generation before you, you can't just let it rest. I think you need to work with it. You need to talk about it. You need to know where your ancestors came from and what their destinies were and where they ended up. And there, in this case, I think partition and the German post-war situation are a little bit similar, because the region where I am from in Germany is a very rural region in the south. Doubled in population after 45, because the ethnic Germans from Poland and the Czechoslovakia were kicked out after the war as a revenge. They wanted to get rid of all the Germans. They hated them so much, and they had to settle somewhere. So the region where I'm from doubled in population, and you can imagine it's like Delhi. The city of Delhi, half of it goes away, half of it comes again. So you see these people in the village or in the little town, and when you talk to my uncles and aunts, they start saying that we hated them from the get-go. They were taking our jobs, and they were, living in our houses because they had to be housed somewhere. So the government put them somewhere. And so we lived next to people whom we didn't know. And there was a very, very poisoned atmosphere in a time where, everybody suffered a bit. There was no food, no money, no jobs.
Even after the war?
After the war. It was a terrible time. I think in 45 to the early 50s, when the Wirtschaftswunder, the miracle of the economy started, everybody had a tough time. So they had to share everything. And it was only slowly that they integrated these people. And now they have been contributing in the last 7 decades, I would say, to a great wealth. The region where I'm come is extremely wealthy. People are very rich. And these, skilled people from in this case, Czechoslovakia, they made a huge difference here. So, but it was a tough time, it was tough.
You want to talk a little bit about the economic miracle?
Yeah. Well, with American help and a very, very decided and extremely, thoughtful economic policy, there was a reindustrialization happening. So industries were supported by the government, and entrepreneurs came, and the world economy then started to grow again. And Germany was with this in this industrial past of Germany, we had skills. That was very good. So there was
also during the war, there were companies that came up.
During the war, I think basically what happened in 1939 was we changed into a war economy. So basically what happened was that every steel company, every machine company turned into some weapon manufacturer, or many of them. But that was over. And after the war, as you know, in the first years, the Soviet Union took whole factories to Russia because they said, this is our right. We suffered. We bring all the machinery to Russia and try to set up the machineries there. But in West Germany, it has to be said, Germany was divided. In West Germany, with a lot of money from the United States and a lot of decisiveness and a lot of good economic policy by the government, I think the miracle started very early. So basically, I think, in 10 years' time, by the end of the 50s or beginning of 60s, there was the first clear insight that there was a lack of skilled labor in Germany. Or labor, not even skilled labor, but labor. Many of German soldiers were dead or still in Soviet camps, so there was no people to work in the factories.
I mean, the war had caused the population to shrink.
Yeah.
So there was basically fewer people to do the work.
Exactly. And the moment you build up factories, the moment you produce more, you start car producing or steel producing or machinery producing or you name it, you need people, at least at that time. Now it's different, but in this time you had, assembly lines. And that's where the German government started bringing Turkish people to Germany. First Greeks, then Italians, and then lots and lots of Turkish people. So basically from the 60s onwards, I would say, there's a growing Turkish population in Germany. And now, you must say population-wise, Germany is like Tamil Nadu. It's about 80-something million, 83 million, 84 million. And out of these 84 million, 3 million are of Turkish descent, 3.5 million are of Turkish descent. And they came into Germany in the 60s as factory workers. So
my question is, how does a country the size of Tamil Nadu become one of the world's biggest economies? Yeah. What's gone right also for Germany? And
so I'd say it's not easy to answer, but there is a old industrial tradition. Germany was not the first country to be industrialized, but maybe in the second wave. So there is a clear experience and knowledge about how to produce things. But then there is one thing which is important, that's education. You need to train your people in the right way. And there's two things in Germany. There is academic education, like you did, you are an engineer, and these engineering schools, technical schools in Germany are very good, are world class. But this is not enough. You need also to educate the people who are, in the mid-level people, like technicians, like car builders, like even plumbers or bakers. And Germany has a very specific way of training them. And let me tell you, that's, I think, one of the big fortes of my country is that a young guy who's maybe not intellectually so stimulated that he or she wants to go to university. So what you can do is you get a training that goes along with a school, public schooling, and some apprenticeship in a workshop. And after 3 years, after 2.5 years, you get a diploma on that. So basically you have a diploma as a baker. You are taught how to bake bread and cake and cookies properly. You get a diploma as a welder. And that leads to the fact that these people are very highly regarded in Germany. So the little town I was telling you about, where I'm from, these craftspeople have an incredibly important role to play. And I would say that the baker, the local baker or the local butcher, has as much as a recognition as the local doctor. So they are very important. They are well earning. So I have a cousin who is a roofer. He puts tiles on roofs, and he has 60 people. He's a rich man. He's a very, very established craftsman, and they are in the politics. They are in the festivities. They have functions, in honorary functions, and in the association sports and others. And so they are very, very established. And that's one thing that you don't find, even in the West, you don't find it so strongly. Because this schooling gives them also a self-confidence, and they are very good. They are just very good.
What do you mean in the West you don't find it?
So I think this system, you have the only country that has it is Switzerland also. But, in France or in the UK, you don't have this vocational training, and therefore the level of craftsmanship is not that developed.
Okay. I'm going to have a go at something, and then please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm a big football fan.
Yeah.
And often I've noticed that in sport, especially team sports, the way a team plays often represents the character of the people of their country. For example, when you watch Brazil play, you know that the people are a little more fun and they like to party because of just how they play football. When a football fan watches Germany play football, I've been seeing Germany play football since I was a child, from the 2002 World Cup. And it's always been the same organized way of playing. It doesn't matter if the team is completely young, new, whatever. It's a system that they always follow.
I think you have a point, I would say. I mean, the latest German performance at the World Cup was really not very convincing. Whether we were systematic or not, we don't want to talk about it, But it's true that, German football is not as playful and colorful as Argentinian or Brazilian football, or even Italian football, I would say. There is a bit of a structure and a bit of a sort of an organized way of going at it. And, that means also the aim is winning, and you do a lot in order to win. It's not a momentous football. It's a football that is looking towards the end. But sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't,
It's a coaching-based system. As in, the coach has a lot of say. And he plans that, okay, I'll choose these players because they'll have to play in my way. And I feel, this is also coming from a place of having traveled to Germany, it's possibly the most organized place I've ever seen on earth. Like, everything is organized, everything is on time. I'd probably say maybe second to Japan. But Japan and Germany, these two places are hyper-organized, hyper-coach-centric. And that's maybe a reason for this kind of economic success as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think organization is certainly an economic success. But then I will also draw your attention to another point. And structure and organization is certainly in our DNA. That's true. We are very organized, maybe too organized sometimes, and also too regulated, if I may say. But there's one thing, and I was talking about these refugees coming in. These refugees, they brought an enormous will and an enormous readiness to do something with their lives. And there was ingenuity and creativity coming through these refugees. So these people were very healthy for the German economy. They brought really the German economy up. So you had these people wanted to do something. And in a way, it's not to be compared, but I wanted to compare that a bit, if I may. The historical comparisons are always a bit a problem. But I think when the Hindus and Sikhs, let's say, came from west of the border to Delhi, it was a similar thing. They wanted to start a new life. They wanted to start a life from scratch, basically. And they were very, very ready to invest a lot. They were very industrious, extremely committed. And that's an experience that also brings a lot of creativity and a lot of economic activity. And, we have, as you might know, we have received over 1 million Syrian refugees in 2015. And they came because of the civil war that left Syria. And these Syrians, they understand, I think, that's my experience in Germany, they understand that the way back home is over. They will not go home to Syria. They have been in Germany now since 8 years. Their kids are in German schools. They speak German better than Arabic. And they want to do something with their lives in Germany. And you see the most remarkable CVs of these Syrian refugees. So, for example, in Frankfurt, you have been there. Frankfurt, there was elections for the mayor of Frankfurt. And the candidate of a social democratic party is a Syrian. He's a Syrian. I mean, he's German by now, but he's a Syrian citizen, a Christian from Syria who has fled and who lived in Germany for a while, and now he's in politics. And you see, there is a force in these refugee movements that is not to be underestimated. Okay. So for us, it's basically, I think it will pay. after a while, these people will be very, very good in German economy.
Yeah. My reading of this whole answer of yours is that initially the population was small, which allowed the government to set a very strong education system on many levels. Lots of people came in from other countries, mixed in with that system, and now they've built out this mega economy which is like growing constantly.
Yes. It would have not been possible without foreigners, in a way. It would not have been possible. And when you see that, the German character changed also over the years, I would say that food has become much better. Since the Italians came to Germany, food has been so much better. The Turkish brought their fresh vegetables, and you see all these
kebabs.
Turkish, the kebabs, the doner kebabs. I mean, this is something. It's a Turkish Berlin invention, I think. But you see that there is a lot of, Germany becomes more and more diverse. Not like India, but we are 20% of Germans now, a fifth of Germans have one non-German parent. That's quite a lot. It's quite a lot. So it is a more international and global place. It has become a much more international and global place. And I think this is the only way to survive. Our economy must live on this global scale. It can't go back to a national mini economy with little interest. No, we are playing on a high level, and that level can only be sustained if you get this diversity in the level.
Okay.
And that's good in India. The Indians are so good at that, because look at how many Indians are in the top layer of American firms. It's unbelievable. There is not one that hasn't got some Indian on the board of directors. They have this global spirit of India is something which I admire a lot, and this will bring the country a lot of is getting the country a lot of boost. And,
okay.
Yeah.
I have to bring you back to diplomat mode, and I have to ask you what the best and worst thing about being a diplomat is.
So the best thing, your life is pretty rich, basically. So you experience a lot more than other people do. So look, I lived in Morocco for 3 years, and then in New York for 3 years, and then I was back in Berlin, and then I went to Afghanistan. I lived for a year in the most remote area of Afghanistan, not even in Kabul, but in the most remote area in Afghanistan.
Wait. Forget that question.
Happy to talk about, So I lived in Kunduz, which is in northern Afghanistan. It's a city which is one of the centers in northern Afghanistan. And I was the head of what we call a provincial reconstruction team, where 550 soldiers and a small group of diplomats tried to, change a bit support, let's say, the government institutions in this area. And that was a very tough job.
When was this? Which year was this?
2006 and 2007.
This is at the peak of the war on terror and all that.
It was basically when I came in 2006, the mood was perfect. Everybody was happy. We were building schools and streets, and it was really... And then the Taliban came back in early 2007, in April. They started really attacking local security institutions, and then also the German army. So I was unfortunately there when a big attack happened.
Really? You've lived through an attack?
Yeah. I mean, I was not directly attacked, but we lost 3 soldiers.
You mean on the embassy?
On this very strange provincial reconstruction team. So 550 German soldiers and a handful of diplomats. So 3 of these soldiers were killed on the market in that. And, it was very mean and heinous, this attack, because not only that they killed the soldiers, but the Bazaris, of course, they were so afraid of receiving Germans as clients after that, because they said, we might go, we might be shot or, bombed because of that. And so there was the relationship between the local population and the Germans deteriorated after that. So basically, when I left, the situation was much worse than when I came. Really? And in hindsight, we have to say that, we failed. We failed in Kunduz. We tried our best, but we failed.
You say you failed because you said that the main skill for being a diplomat is communication. And somehow you weren't able to talk to Afghan hearts.
No, I think basically I would say that we talked to Afghan hearts a lot. We said we said one thing at the beginning. We said, security and development are interdependent. If there is more security, there is more development. If there is more development, there is more security. That's wrong. It turned out to be wrong, because it's first security, and then comes development. And what happened was that the people of Kunduz and in the neighboring provinces, you cannot imagine I was in every village in this area, and I think there are very few Afghans who have seen so much of Afghanistan in comparison to me. But
you've seen a lot of interior Afghanistan.
Yeah, I was in every village. I mean, I was in the most remote villages. I was in villages where the women could not leave the houses. They would not be allowed to leave the houses. So we offered, courses in hygiene and birth control for women. And the people who did it, they went from house to house because you couldn't even gather the women in some common place, even without men. But they would not be allowed to. I mean, you must imagine that the woman, once she marries, cannot leave the house for the rest of her life. I mean, it's very strange. So I've seen a lot of things that are so strange to our. But what I wanted to say is that we spoke to the hearts of the Afghans as long as they felt secure. The moment the Taliban came, again, they realized that the Germans would not prevent them from bombing because they were in the mountains and we were only 550 soldiers. And they said, okay, now what should I do as a family in Afghanistan? Should I listen to the Taliban or should I listen to the Germans? Or should I do both? Because you never know what happens. We have lived 30 years or 20 years of war and now all of a sudden there is war again. So basically what I felt was at the end that we spoke to the Afghans, we interacted with them, but they always had this little door open towards the Taliban because they knew that someday they might come back.
Out of fear.
Out of fear. And when you ask me where did we fail as diplomats, and I will tell you one thing in hindsight, we didn't know enough about Afghanistan. We just didn't know enough. Culturally, we didn't know the DNA. We didn't know the problems of Afghanistan. And we were not well enough prepared, basically.
Did you meet any Taliban members?
Yes, I did.
What's it like talking to them?
They are very courteous and extremely, formal, I would say. You can discuss with them, but they're very, very conservative, in a traditional way conservative. And they are ideologues. They are of the opinion that they know what the real Islam is. Nobody else does it, only them. And that makes them so secure. They say, there is no other country in the world, Muslim country in the world, that would not let women go to university. Not a single one, only Afghanistan. And they feel that they have found the truth. It's like they are not open to discussions because they say this is the true and only Islam, and we are following the rules of. And that's very difficult to break through to them. So it's okay to talk to them, but you don't get very far, actually, I would say.
Were there any women on your team?
We had one woman, and when I started, we had a great interaction with women. I will tell you a story which is quite interesting. In Germany, the burqa, you remember this blue thing, this is the worst. Everybody thinks that this is the discrimination of women, is the burqa, is the worst of the worst. So when I came home and I talked about Afghanistan, everybody talks about burqa all the time. So this is an obsession in Germany saying that. And I understand that. And it's also my obsession because I find it absolutely horrific, these burqas. But when I talked to the women of Kunduz, and there were some very emancipated women, teachers, female teachers, also some doctors, and they said, the burqa is the least of our problems. They said, what is our problem? Our problem is the role in the household, that we can't work. If we get work, I'm happy to wear a burqa. It's just, you have to have a different role in society. The burqa is such, we can cope with that, but not with the fact how we are treated in society. So for them, the burqa was not so important, I would say, although I think they would have preferred not to wear it, but it's not that. And then they also say, the moment you wear a burqa, people respect you. If you don't wear a burqa, then people the women got harassed a bit. So burqa was also a protection shield in a way. That's sad enough. Yeah, it's not a good reason to wear a burqa, but I would say that our perception, and when I say we didn't know enough about Afghanistan, was that with our view, the Western view on things in Afghanistan, we didn't get very far. Our idea is tainted. It's a biased idea of Afghanistan. We were not aware of the intricacies and so another example. Are you okay with my example?
Go for it.
So
you
Kunduz,
have a crazy life story.
Yeah,
I'm just like listening. Go on.
So in Kunduz, in Afghanistan, so there are many ethnicities. Like in India, you have Tajiks and you have Pashtus and you have Hazara. And so this region where I was in the 30s, now that's basically 70 years ago, was for ethnic reason, the central government sent Pashtu settlers. Pashtus are in the south, Tajiks are. They sent Pashtu settlers to this region. So 70 years ago. They fled during the civil war, these Pashtu settlers, after 50 years living in Kunduz, they fled to Pakistan, and then they came back. So the population of the Tajiks didn't want them back. So they said to me, you Germans, you have to see to it that these people don't come again. And I said, come on, guys, they have been living here for 50 years. I mean, they had houses, they had land. Yes, but they are strangers. They never belonged to this texture. Then I told the story I told you from the refugees from Czechoslovakia who, basically contributed to make my hometown and the region a very prosperous one. So they wouldn't hear of it. And this is something where we Germans could not do anything. This is such a complicated conflict between the ethnicities in Afghanistan that with our knowledge and with our manpower, we could not rule, and the government did nothing. They felt it is too hot a potato. They would not.
Again, this is down to a lack of education. And I also want to highlight something I actually learned from a trip I had to Israel very long ago. When they wanted to teach Hebrew to the whole population after World War II, they decided that it should be compulsory for all the girls to learn Hebrew till the age of 18. But it's okay if the guys only learn it till a certain age, because women become mothers who then teach the families.
Very smart. Very smart.
Here, if you're preventing girls from education, you're actually preventing a population from education as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we did in Afghanistan, big time. We did girls' schools everywhere. And, with a lot of money and a lot of heart and a lot of conviction. And I think they're all closed.
Did the Taliban members treat your female team members differently?
Yeah, but we did not talk to the Taliban in Kunduz. We talked to the Taliban in a later stage. I was then basically the deputy special representative for Afghanistan in Berlin, and we tried to then initiate a dialogue with the Taliban in order to get them into some government of national unification, of a sort of a national reconciliation government. And that also failed. So we talked with Taliban later, the sort of the diplomatic representation of Taliban. So I brought one of these Taliban. I brought them Talibs, as we should. I brought him to Berlin in order to sit down and get a little. That's what you do as a diplomat. It's a culture far away. We don't agree on anything basically with the Taliban. On nothing we agree. But you have to build up some chemistry. So what I did was, I thought, how do you deal with such a person in Berlin? Berlin, Western capital, very liberal, full of crazy people.
Took him to a nightclub?
Yeah, like this, there are lots of gay people and this is the worst for Taliban in a way. So I thought, what would you do? So I thought we bring them to the Islamic collection of the Berlin museums in order to show him that Germany has a huge respect for Islamic art and civilization. And he thought that was quite interesting. But he said when he get out of this museum, you have not been to Berlin, but what you see is that in the midst of Berlin, the worst fights of the Second World War were happening in early 45. So in the last month of the war, you had fierce fighting in Berlin. And in the middle of Berlin, the heart where this museum island is, you see these traces of the war everywhere. You see holes and in the walls, from bullets. You see parts of the buildings are still destroyed. And in order to remember the horrors of war, the government decided to keep this, the holes, to keep that sort of the memories of the war. Basically, they're very visible and they're very well preserved, like a monument. And this was the thing that the Talib was completely flabbergasted about. I said, why don't you repair that? He says, I said, we want to keep it to show that on this in this very location, in 45, nobody went to the museum, but they hid behind trees or fled because there was fierce fighting. And the city was basically a battlefield. And we hate this idea, but we should remember it. And that was, for him, he was thinking time and again about this, the horrors of war will be preserved to show the people how bad war is. That made an impression of him. Was not very useful, as you see, but at least that was something he reacted to.
All those girls' schools that you guys built and other developmental projects, do you know what's happened to them now that the Taliban's taken over?
It's a very good question, because I'm wondering very often, I have been so involved with this. Emotionally, it's very difficult also to see that this is all gone. There is we built a huge hospital in Mazar Sharif. I think that might work. An airport, also roads, and I think this infrastructure is still there. But the schools, I think they're all closed. I don't know what they do with the schools. I don't know. Nobody has been there. We don't have an embassy there. We don't have diplomatic relations. And the Taliban, at the beginning, we thought, okay, they will be turned, once they take over, they might be a little more realistic. And the ones with whom we talked, they said, yeah, you will see, we'll allow girls to school and go to university, and you see what happens. Nothing.
Have you spoken to the PM? Have you had a conversation with him?
Yeah, we had a conversation in the group, basically. I can't say that I had a bilateral conversation with him, but we had a conversation around the table.
What do you make of his life?
It's quite impressive, don't you think?
No, I mean like his life right now in terms of when you're the PM,
yeah.
I don't think you get time for anything other than stuff to do.
I'm guessing, but I think you are right. I mean, he's constantly on, and I know from the babus, the civil servants, that he is up very early and he's, requiring information. And so I think he's very demanding in a way. And that's how you lead such a big country. I mean, look at India. This is not some average country. It's 1.4 billion. It's the most populous nation on earth. And there's a lot to do. And I think, his life is dedicated to politics and to leading this nation.
A bit of a stupid question, but does the Chancellor get any free time? Or
I think it's
all
very
these world
similar.
leaders, they're always busy?
Very similar. Never a free weekend, never a free evening. It's all... I mean, I think the Chancellor goes for 2 weeks holidays once a year. But that's very private. And for the rest of it, the Chancellor's wife, she's a minister in a state government, so she's also busy the whole time. And so basically, life is, once you are committed to national politics, your life gets very one-sided, I would say. Yeah. There is no much time for anything else.
Trading off a lot of other things for that responsibility. And you really need to want it, I think.
It's true. It's a commitment. It's almost a religious commitment, I would say. It's something that you give up most of your life when you do that. But it's only for a time. You should not, the former Chancellor, she was there for 16 years. So she is now, I think, enjoying retirement and baking and writing and reading. But 16 years is a toll, it takes a heavy toll on you.
Before India, you were in America, right?
Mm-hmm.
So did you end up meeting Barack Obama?
Yes.
How was he?
It was on the day, I will tell you. It was on the day, we had a nice conversation. It was on the day in 2014 when Germany played Brazil in the World Cup. You remember? 7-1.
Yeah.
7-1 and 7 Germany. So he asked me, it was ahead of the game, and he asked me, how is tonight? I mean, he apparently was following the World Cup quite closely. He says, what do you think is going to happen tonight? And I said, I share a secret with you, Germany will win, I said to him. It was quite a guess, but I had no idea 7-1. I mean, that was like a prophecy. Very nice, extremely
charismatic.
Chilled, chilled is the word.
As compared to other world leaders.
Yeah, every world leader has another... I think the Prime Minister here, he's very close to the people. And look at him, he's very popular. People really like him. He's reaching out. I'm not so sure whether Putin reaches out to people in this way, like Prime Minister Modi does. I think when you talk to the rickshawala, I'm always talking about rickshawalas because I talk with rickshawalas all the time. They really like him.
Yeah. You're able to speak in Hindi?
Yeah, a little Hindi, little English. Sometimes they do both. And
okay.
So and you feel that there is really he's popular, and I'm not sure whether this way of expressing yourself naturally about Putin is possible in Russia, because everybody thinks that you say something on politics, you might end up in jail right now. I mean, the ones who don't like this war so much up in jail.
Okay, now a little raw question for you. This is going to be a little journalist mode.
Good.
So have you heard of someone called Abhijit Chavda?
No.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So he's an astrophysicist who's also a historian by passion. He's been on the show a lot. And he's possibly our most popular guest.
Oh, right?
Yeah.
He comes here regularly.
Regularly.
Okay.
Yeah. And whenever he comes and does an episode with us, World War III, and I hate saying that as a possibility, becomes a part of the conversation. Do these kind of World War III related conversations happen at your level of work?
So let me start by saying that the fact that there is a war in Europe was so unthinkable a year and a half ago, so completely unthinkable that we have this kind of war, that I would say I wouldn't exclude anything right now. So, but what I would say is that diplomats are there in order to avoid this scenario. That's our vocation. That's what we have to do. We have coming from Germany, I must say, World War III would be the biggest catastrophe ever, because you know what weaponry we have right now. What could happen in another world war. So I think our main task is now to try to stop and end this war. And let me say that I think that there is still a chance that this will end at some stage. Not very soon, unfortunately, but it will end without getting spread out to the rest of the world. And you see, I was now that, India holds the G20 presidency, and we had a meeting with the foreign ministers last week, and I was attending this meeting, and you see and you feel that there is a atmosphere in the room. Also, those who have good relations with Russia, that they are fed up with this war. Nobody wants this war because it has such a strong impact on the world economy. When whether it's fertilizer or energy procurement, and so South Africa and Brazil and all these countries, you feel there is a fatigue. And I felt that the Russian argument was pretty isolated. So that doesn't mean that the war will end quickly. I'm afraid that will not be the case, but I think there is still a big chance to contain it.
Okay. Do you feel that it's just Putin who wants to keep the war going and maybe not even the Russian diplomats?
I think in Russia you have this nationalistic mood. You have the television and social media. They are, really whipping them up, and everybody thinks that they are discriminated and unjust, treated unfairly. But the facts are that the biggest country on earth with a very small population, it's not even France and Germany together, invades another country to grab land. This can't be acceptable. It just can't happen. And everybody who thinks properly must see that this is not what we want. And therefore, the safety of borders as a very, very important part of the international order must be sustained. It is very important that this international order cannot be violated by the strongest. And that's why I think the West and other countries are so united against this war, because we feel it is a precedent for many, many other border conflicts. Border conflicts in this region, for example. You cannot have one nation that has more people and more weapons invade a smaller country, a weaker country maybe, and change the geographical situation. For what reasons? It's very difficult to understand why, because they change goalposts all the time. But I think the dedication and the commitment from our side is to make this war come to a stop, but not in a way that, Ukraine is the loser of this war.
The one thing I've learned through this podcast, again, by talking to a lot of people who are geopolitical observers, is that when you actually study history from a macro view, like from a really long-term view, you see that borders always change.
That's true.
And borders haven't changed in a long time now. I won't say borders haven't changed in a long time, but more or less.
Yeah, I find it a good argument actually, because you say borders are not something that are, it's not the Bible or the Mahabharata. It's something that is a deliberate. But what we have learned, and this is the European experience after World War II, is that borders can be overcome in a completely different way. So between the European countries, borders are there, between Poland and Germany, Germany and France, Germany and Holland, but they are completely permissive. You can go from one side to the other. You don't show your passport, you just cross them. When you want to have a good dinner in a French restaurant, you go just across the border. Or when you feel Dutch cheese is cheaper in Holland, you just go there. Or people go to fill gas in Poland, because it's cheaper. Basically, they go and cross the border. So the border is there. It marks the difference between two countries, but it is not a wall. It's just very porous and deliberately so. And this is a border management, I think, that pleases everyone. Germany has lost after the Second World War a third of its territory to Poland and Russia. And I think with the new situation, with Poland being a member of the European Union, Poland being a friend, basically, people go and see their parents' houses in villages that once were Germans, but are now Polish. And that works perfectly well. Nobody puts in question. And I think when you work with borders this way, you can keep them, but also overcome them at the same time.
As a diplomat, and I'm sorry I'm asking you this, but as a diplomat, are you given some sort of training for a war-like situation if something is breaking out? Do you all have protocols?
Sure. I mean, there are rules, international rules, what happens when war breaks out and how diplomats are treated and dealt with. But I would say we don't have a special training for wars. And let me make that clear here. I don't see a third world war coming right now. I say that with all caution because we didn't foresee the Ukrainian war also. But I think that's still another dimension. And nobody, including Putin, I would say, is interested in a third world war. Now, we have seen, and I talked about the First World War, I think nobody had foreseen by then what a terrible war that would be at the end of leading to the complete dissolution of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, for example. But so there are always, random situations but I think there is a clear commitment. And when you hear even the Chinese, when they speak, being very close to the Russians, they really don't want war in a large scale. So I'm pretty confident that the world powers, the leaders, and Prime Minister Modi being one of them, will do their utmost to avoid the third world war situation.
Do you think as a diplomat, the world is becoming a better place?
Yes.
You feel so?
Yes.
Or you think it's the same?
No, I think it's becoming a better place. It's a very unusual remark right now because we have this gloominess, war and everything. But when you look what happens in the world with medical progress, educational progress, economic progress, the awareness rising of what climate change means, how we change our energy. And I think we are in a very good phase of the Earth. I don't want, if you ask me, would I like to live in another era? No way. I think it's the best world ever. And the fact that I sit with you here in this podcast shows, how close the world has grown. And that's also a very, very good thing. I think 50 years ago, it wouldn't have been possible in this way. So I think this globalization, with all the negative aspects to it, I think I would recognize that, has led to a new consciousness in many ways that is very good.
Okay. Dr. Ackermann, that was it. That's the episode for today.
Excellent.
You're the first diplomat we've had on the show. And
I'm
it was
very
great
grateful.
getting to know about your mind.
Yeah.
But more importantly, what you said about 50 years ago, we wouldn't have dreamt of this kind of a situation. For me, this was an attempt to get to know your childhood and your perspectives, and then how your life is as a diplomat as well. So thank you, sir. Learned from you. I hope
Thanks,
you had fun.
Ranveer. I think it was a great opportunity. I liked the conversation. I hope I didn't talk too much, but
No.
it was a very nice exchange. I'm very curious to hear what your audience is, how they react to it, what they say to it.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing your perspective, sir.
Dhanyawad.
And any last message for the Indian audiences watching this?
My last message is saying that this is a great country, which I personally love very much. There's still a lot to do in many ways, but I'm very confident that India will be one of the great nations, is already, but will be even more one of the great nations in the years to come. So I'm very happy to be in India and not anywhere else, actually. And I'm looking forward to a couple of very satisfactory years ahead. Maybe we sit together one day.
Yes, for sure. Thank you, Dr. Philipp Ackermann. This was fantastic.
Thanks, Ranveer. Thank you.
I wish you all the best in life, wherever life takes you next.
Very good.
Thank you, sir. That was the episode for today. Dr. Ackermann's life story, Dr. Ackermann's childhood in Germany, and Dr. Ackermann's European perspectives were what kind of molded my mind through the course of this episode. I constantly wish to talk to expats. I wish to talk to people from other countries on the Ranveer Show, extract the best bits of their life, and then bring it forward for the audience, for the listeners of the Ranveer Show. Next week, we have our third geopolitics special with one of India's most reputed journalists. Do look out for that one as well. I'll allow you guys to try guessing who it might be. Tell me in the comment section. I want feedback on this episode as well. I want feedback on every single episode because this podcast has been built through your feedback. So please let me know where I can improve as a podcaster. Please let me know who else you'd like to see on the show. And definitely follow the Ranveer Show on Spotify. We're Spotify exclusive. Every episode's available on Spotify 48 hours before it's available anywhere else in the world. Before I let you go, I'll remind you that my meditation and yoga app, Level, is now live on the App Store and the Play Store. Make sure you go download it to begin or possibly further your meditation and your yoga journey. Ranveer will be back soon on the Ranveer Show. Thanks for listening in.